All right, welcome back for another episode of Talk to Tatiana. And Tatiana, I'm here today with Lily Garland. Lily, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So, Lily, you're part of this series that I've reached out to people to talk about kind of their failures in business because
Mhm.
I think that um, a lot of entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, rather, get this fear of failure, which is completely justified,
Mhm.
but maybe they sometimes don't even start anything. And so that's something that I want to change. I want to
Mhm.
um, change the way people start businesses, which is why I wrote the book. But at the same time,
Mhm.
I also want to ensure that when they do, they don't think that everybody else has done it without failure, without
Mhm.
has done it perfectly, that it's always
Mhm.
been, perfect
Mhm.
and fluffy and stuff. And so
Mhm.
talk to us a little bit about who you are, what your
Yeah.
background is, your career growth. Just yeah, if
Yeah.
you can just brag about yourself.
Sure. So I currently own Flowers by Lily Garland. So I'm a florist. I do this full time. I also have a second business called Wagon Wed, where we go to people's weddings and we are basically their dogs plus one. So it's wedding day pet care. So a lot of brides and grooms want their dog to be in their pictures or walk down the aisle as a flower girl, and we're basically, facilitating that. So I do have two successful companies now, but it's been, a process to kind of get here, as you alluded to. So I graduated from college, got my first job out of college at Disney Consumer Products. Stayed in consumer products for a little while, realized very quickly that the corporate world was not for me and I wanted to work for myself. And I had two startups that didn't really work out along the way to kind of get here. And I really don't have too many regrets about doing that. But I learned a ton and I'm glad that I started, and it led me to kind of where I am today. So I started Mata Market, which is a basket import company. I had a friend in the Peace Corps. So we would import handmade baskets from Madagascar. The idea was to sell them on like Etsy or start our own website or sell them at local businesses. I lived in LA at the time. Um, People didn't end up making baskets very quickly. And they weren't super motivated, a little on island time, so supply chain issues. So that didn't work out. At some point, I had, a whole studio apartment in LA full of African baskets. And then my now husband and I started a goofy sock company called Socks on the Beach. We tried to do a Kickstarter, so it was ocean humor themed men's dress socks. Never got it off the ground, but it was a lot of fun to kind of try and design. And, along the way, I learned a lot of things that led me to where I am today. So, yeah.
And so talk a little bit about the specifics of well, first of all, actually talk about before you do that, talk about where you are today, just so that we can
Yeah.
get a perspective.
Yeah. So I spent, I want to say, 10 years in LA, living a couple blocks from the beach, working corporate jobs, trying to start my side hustle on the side. Eventually, I decided that I was really interested in floral design and events and that sort of thing. So I went back to school. They have a whole associate's degree program in Long Beach. Took a bunch of design classes and kind of started my business word of mouth. Since then, I've moved to North Idaho. I'm a floral designer full time. I do mostly weddings, a lot of country clubs. We are a like destination high end resort community, so Fourth of July is absolute chaos in my world. So that's kind of where I'm at. I've got 10 lovely ladies who work for me in my floral design business. A lot of them are part time, they deliver and set up during the season. And then I've got four who are designers or team leads that are, 20 to 40 hours a week. So that's kind of where I'm
And
at.
nice. And what's your favorite part about this business?
Um, I love, I guess, customer service, working with clients, creating that experience, and just being creative. So it's been a really good fit. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Terrific.
Yeah.
And so when you started your other two businesses, what have you learned? And you can talk in as much
Mhm.
detail as you can. What have you learned from those businesses? What have you learned as lessons? As what worked
Mhm.
out, what didn't work out? Kind of
Yeah.
what prompted you to move and then to maybe start another
Yeah.
business? Like, What was that
Yeah.
like?
I was pretty dead set on being an entrepreneur, starting my own business. I mean, this is kind of, in my view, the start of the success story. Hopefully, I'll have other businesses along the way. Um, I think with Meta Market, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere and people's interests weren't aligned. Like I thought it would be this cool kind of like nonprofit, women in Madagascar making these baskets, we're going to import them, that sort of thing. And I really came to the realization, like timeline wise, that the motivation wasn't quite there and wasn't quite what I had wanted it to be, or the growth path wasn't really there. You know, it was going to be a side hustle. It's going to be whenever they felt like sending me baskets, I'd get baskets, you know. So we just decided to move on. My friend in the Peace Corps and I, you know, we're still friends. Kim, hi. But we just decided to move on. And I think it was a good learning process. We designed a lot of branding and set up social media pages. You know, a lot of things you learn early on is like whenever, you know, when I started Wagon Wed, which was my fourth company basically, um, you know, choosing a name for a company was like an hour long discussion that me and my husband had. And it was, you know, really quick branding done. But with Battle Market, it was, you know, drawn out over weeks and days and, you know, just things like choosing a social media handle that'll work across all the platforms you learn or starting a website, right? Like, cause I purchased my first domain name with Meta Market. Like I already had kind of those learnings that I then applied later on.
Nice. And so,
Yeah.
what didn't work out with you know with that with those first business? I know that you said about the socks company that
Mhm.
never got off the ground. So your Kickstarter didn't get funded, or like what's the deal there?
Yeah, it didn't get funded. I mean, we had, sorry, my dog wants to go outside. Hold on one second. Uncle Barry.
No worries. We love dogs.
Yeah, he'll keep whining. That's the big problem, right? He might poke his little nose in the window there. Um, so our Kickstarter didn't get funded. There was, to make socks of a certain quality, you have to set up like a machine, a tooling cost, basically set up the machine to weave them in a certain pattern, right? So there was a minimum order we had to hit to do that. There's some socks that are like screen printer or made in different ways. They just weren't as high quality as we had wanted. Um, I briefly considered picking it back up. I mean, a lot of our ideas were pretty goofy, pretty funny, and maybe figuring out a way to kind of make it, to start it on a smaller scale than we had initially envisioned. So,
It's cool. That's nice.
yeah.
And how was the like? How did you find the Kickstarter process? I mean, I've had clients whose main business was Kickstarter projects, which is
Oh,
interesting.
wow. Yeah. I think it's kind of like its own marketing beast that I personally haven't cracked the code on. I learned that you need to drive a lot of your own traffic, and then you'll get organic traffic after that, right? You can't rely on the organic traffic. So it's a lot of marketing and that sort of thing. We did hire a marketing company to help us with that and do some Google ads and that sort of thing. But they didn't have any experience with Kickstarter, which is different than normal marketing, is, I guess, something I learned along the way.
That's cool. And yeah, I mean, I feel like this one client of mine, he doesn't do this
Mhm.
anymore, but they used to create new limited edition things where
Mhm.
they would do a campaign, sell it, fulfill it, and make money on it, and move on to something else. Like,
Hmm.
which was
That's
very interesting. And
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, they really nailed the videos, and I still I think the videos were really good. Like it
Hmm.
showed the machinery that was used to produce stuff and polish and that kind of stuff. It was really cool,
Oh, that's
actually. I
cool.
mean,
That's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's
Kickstarter.
not something I succeeded at. Doesn't mean I won't in the future, but it's kind of its own animal in terms of marketing in my book, at least.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so now you've mentioned that um, you now work as a full time florist, and so what how do you when you I mean how do you manage this business in a sense that what roles do you play, what roles do you
Hmm.
outsource, what how do you what advisors do you rely on,
Hmm.
um, and then I also have a question after that for you,
Okay.
kind of in terms of yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think my roles kind of shifted, especially over the past 2 years. I mean, we quadrupled in sales this past year. And so that means my role has changed a lot with that. Last year, for example, the start of the summer, I was doing most of the design work. I could do more than one wedding in a day. I'd send it out with girls to deliver and set up. And this year I had, occasional help last year in the studio where I was training somebody in design. And this year I have most leading up to most weeks, 40 hours of design help from three of my girls. So we've really scaled, we've really grown. And towards the end of the season, I was training at the beginning of the season, but towards the end of the season, um, I kind of did this by accident, but I was down to, I divvied out all the tasks and, the girls that started on it, they know how to read my notes. They know what I want from that. And I realized I'd left myself the bridal bouquet to do, which I will probably never give up. And then I was like, oh, I'm out of tasks to give myself. Like I had divvied them all up. So I think my role is kind of like shifting as I move out of the design studio. I'm bringing in somebody this year to help me with some admin work. So it's been changing and evolving, I guess.
That's cool, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you enjoy the creative part, which is what you mentioned just earlier. And
Hmm.
when you started any of the businesses,
Hmm.
I'm not asking about any specific business, but when you started
Hmm.
out, kind of what were the things that surprised you the most? Like what maybe you expected to do that you
Hmm.
didn't know how to do, or maybe the opposite of that? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, you're always learning, you're always growing. And I have taught myself a lot of stuff or Googled a lot of stuff. I built my first website on WordPress. I never thought I would learn how to do that. I mean, really, I wasn't aspiring to design websites, but I built my first one. And, I'm learning a lot about, like accounting and finance. And, now that I have significant sales enough to do a lot of those things. So, um, I'm doing more in QuickBooks than I ever thought I would do too. So it's kind of been surprised along the way about what you can learn, and nothing's really all that complicated if you put your heart to it and mind to it and are motivated.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. I
Mhm.
agree with that. I keep telling my mom that I could learn to be a doctor if I really set out to do it. I can do anything.
Yeah, totally,
I think if
totally.
you're curious enough and if you're committed enough, that's really not nothing is out of reach.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you're in North Idaho, you said?
Yep. I live in North Idaho, little town called Coeur d'Alene. We're a lake resort community, about 45 minutes outside of Spokane, Washington. So I'm like an hour and a half
On the
from
border?
Canada and like 8 hours from Boise, so not near Boise. So yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Hmm.
Was it a business move or
Kind of more of a personal move, but it's been great for business. I mean, I've done really well up here. And in LA, a lot of people create flowers, have small flower businesses, grow flowers, um, and there's schools that teach you, like the one that I went to, and you come up here and it's kind of a scarcer skill, I guess. So it's worked out well. It wasn't intentional, but it's worked out well.
nice?
Yeah.
And you mentioned in your questionnaire that you have this unique ability to help people's vision come to life. I'm curious to
Hmm.
know about like how do you still keep that part of the process? Like you
Hmm.
delegated a lot of the other stuff. What
Hmm.
about this particular one?
Yeah. So right now I manage all the quotes and the design work. So for weddings, for example, I typically send out a questionnaire. They come with their ideas, and then I'll put together a quote and come with my ideas. Present it to them. We'll go through. We'll fix it, adjust it. I expect to do around two, so I show up on their wedding day with what they actually want. So yeah, I'm still super hands-on in the design process. Like I said, I am bringing on somebody to help me a couple hours a week with some admin stuff, and she'll be definitely involved in quotes, but I'm gonna hold on to the design aspect, I think, for now. So yeah.
Awesome. And how do you find the sales process? Meaning, do you like sales and also the accounting process? Do you
Mhm.
enjoy it? Do you dread it? Just talk a little bit more about that.
So I actually, one of my last corporate job in LA was in sales. So I really love sales. I love talking to new people. I love kind of figuring out those new strategies, like what's going to work here. And obviously, wedding sales is totally different than most sales. You're not gonna hard close somebody on wedding flowers, right? But the accounting part is like my least favorite aspect of the business, like keeping track of numbers, organizing everything. Oh my gosh. So I'm, still learning and growing in that part of the business. So yeah, I'm getting some help there.
Wow. No, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, accounting is an important part, I think, but definitely something that a lot of creatives struggle with, which is why I
Hmm.
wrote the book.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, I tried to in the book. I tried to make it a kind of like a paint by numbers
Hmm.
roadmap for someone who's starting a business.
Hmm.
That was the idea behind it. But
Hmm.
you know, I know you've talked about your favorite part of the business. What is your goal in business and or life? Meaning, I believe that business is personal,
Hmm.
which to me means that we don't start businesses to just for the sake of starting a business. We start
Hmm.
business so that we can have a better life for ourselves,
Hmm.
for our loved
Hmm.
ones. And so, what is that for you? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. It's a tough question. I think from a business standpoint, I really see myself becoming more of a serial entrepreneur. Like I started my second business, the Wagon Web Company, at the beginning of this past summer. So it's only about 6 months old. I kind of see myself going forward, starting more businesses. My husband and I are looking into like investment rental properties, that sort of thing that I would manage. So I kind of see myself going down that path of starting more companies, maybe eventually selling some of them, that sort of thing. Um, Personally, I mean, I'm hoping maybe kids in the future. I don't know. I'm getting up there. But just starting a family and one of my goals is starting my 2023 New Year's resolutions was to have a little bit more work-life balance, and to, be able to choose when and how I work, a little bit more than I did this past season. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's great. Just usually, every person I ask has a different vision. Some
Hmm.
people see themselves, building up a business to X number of revenue, profit, whatever. I mean,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
orient people on profit because profit is a much greater,
Hmm.
much better measurement of a business's power, I
Yep.
guess.
Yep.
And like I want to get it to X number of net profit. I want
Hmm.
to buy, I don't know, X, Y, and Z, a house, a couple
Hmm.
of properties, whatever. I want
Hmm.
to not work or retire early or something
Hmm.
like that. Like
Hmm.
that's typically, in one way or the other, that's typically the
Hmm.
answer I get.
Yep.
But it's different for everyone. Like everyone, some people just want to start a business and run it forever,
Hmm.
which changes. So a couple of years go by, I've had a client who initially said that they want to run this business forever, and then
Hmm.
like 5 7 years later they were like, I just want to sell it and move on to something else. And so
And hey, that might be me. I mean, right now I'm pretty happy running it. And but maybe down the line, hey, you never know, right? It might be something that I want to do to sell it or something like that. I'm pretty happy, being in it and working the day to day right now.
awesome, awesome. And so what's kind of if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, what would you tell yourself, if anything? Like what would be the one thing that you would tell yourself?
Yeah. I think, you definitely touched on it earlier. I had a lot of hesitation to kind of get started or questions, or I overthought things. If you make the wrong decision, you can always go back and change it, so just make a decision and go forward. The one thing that I do think that I did really well, when I was starting out with my failures and with starting businesses, is that I really never financially like invested all that much, right? Like I invested what I was willing to lose and what it was worth to learn. So, Meta Market, I think my partner and I put in like $500 each and bought a bunch of baskets and started a website that we made ourselves. Socks on the Beach is probably just a little bit more. My flower company, I started with $250. So, I mean, one thing I think I did well was like minimize my risk, right? Or risk what I was willing to lose. But I often kind of like hesitated or overthought, or, like I talked about how coming up with a logo and a name was like a month or a 2 week process for the first company. And it was less than an hour for my fourth, you know. Just get started. There's a learning curve to everything. It would probably be my best advice to my younger self or anybody starting today.
Awesome. Terrific. I love
Mhm.
it. And if you could go back in time and change one thing, if anything, what would that be?
Um, Let me think. What would I change?
If anything. And it could be for the better or for, just change for something else.
Maybe I would have gotten started earlier. I don't know. Like I had high like corporate goal expectations of myself when I first started, and it was tough for me to shift those goals and expectations in myself. But maybe I'd get started earlier if I could change anything.
That's cool. Thanks so much for
Hmm.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Lily, is there anything that you would actually, you know what? Before we go into that, um, if people are listening and they're around your area, northern Idaho, what would
Hmm.
you um, how would you like describe what's the best way to connect with you? Meaning, I know that you work with those who are getting married,
Yep.
understandable.
Hmm.
Resorts,
Hmm.
um, okay, my earpiece just went out for a second.
Yeah. No worries.
Resorts
Yeah.
and other. But do
Hmm.
you work at all with consumers directly besides that, or no?
Yeah, so my business model is a little bit different than your traditional flower shop. I don't do everyday deliveries. If you want one bouquet, don't call me. Sorry. Um, I always tell people if it's your mom's birthday and you want to send her flowers, I'll recommend somebody. Don't call me. Um, but if it's your mom's birthday and you're throwing her a party and you want centerpieces, please call me. So I don't typically work with people who just want that one-off bouquet, but I do work with people any sort of event. So whether it's your Christmas party at your house for your husband's job, or um, a funeral, or a charity event, or something along those lines, I absolutely do work with those people. My website is lilygarland.com. There's, of course, a contact form. My email is lily@lilygarland.com. And then you can find me on social media. I'm a little obsessed with Instagram, Flowers by Lily Garland, at Flowers by Lily Garland, if you want to get in touch with me.
Awesome. I'll keep that in the show notes. But do you also do corporate events, like corporate parties and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yep.
Terrific.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. And so, is there any sort of theme or specialty that you specialize in? It's kind of redundant, but
No, I totally get that. I think one thing that I do that's a little different than the other florists in this area is that I do like the entire tablescape or the entire event. Like I don't just do like a flower arrangement for the center of the table. So I do some rental candles or moss or lanterns or anything that would go with the flowers on the table decor. So I do all types of decor, if that makes sense,
yeah,
rather than just
absolutely.
flowers. Yep.
Terrific. Well, I
Yeah.
think it's been great to get your insight into this business. I mean, I've worked with one flower business before, but I think there were
Hmm.
more. They were definitely doing like hotels and events, but
Hmm.
but they were also doing like you could walk in and get some flowers if you wanted to.
Hmm. Yep.
So slightly different model, but it was in New York City, so foot
Yeah.
traffic wasn't an issue. But yeah, but it's definitely an interesting model, and I definitely love flowers. Love the arrangements and stuff. I mean, it's always nice to see. So thanks,
Thanks.
thanks so much for sharing
Yeah.
your experience today,
Hmm.
um, and for being. I just hit the microphone. And for being a great guest. For being
Yeah.
a great
Thanks
guest,
for
and,
having me.
yeah, and we hope to see you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, it's been a pleasure. Just don't leave yet once I
Okay.
hit stop. But for everyone else who's listening, you next week we'll talk about a new topic. This is Tatiana. So I'll see you next time for another great episode of Talk to Tatiana show. Bye.